Welcome to The World Today. I'm Waqas Majeed. Today we're talking about the summit that all eyes are on, and that is the summit between North Korea leader Kim Jong-un and Mr. Donald Trump, the President of the United States. What may happen when these two great leaders meet is anybody's guess, but we will try to conjecture on what the outcome would be. Let's all hope that it would be good for the entire planet. Our second topic has to do with something much closer to home, and that is Kashmir, something which is very close to our hearts, and we want to talk about how we can find a way forward when it comes to Kashmir and the India-Pakistan equation. Let's get the conversation started. I'd like to introduce my guests in the studio. Joining me for the conversation today, we have, first of all, Major Ahson Bashir with us, and joining him, we have Salman BHittani. Thank you, sir, for being here. Sir, let's start with the hopes and aspirations of the entire world. They're all looking at Singapore, where on the 12th of June, the two great leaders are going to meet. What are your expectations? So do you think that Mr. Trump will be able to get the Nobel Prize that he is aspiring to these days?
Okay, to begin with, I think you have already made a lot of important points in your just introductory phrase which you have set me to talk about, that how Mr. Trump is going to come out of this coming summit. You see, Waqas, once the entire world is basically gripped, and it is gripped on a hype. A hype has been created by these joints which are ruling the world at the moment, and they do it for their own interest everywhere in the world. Wherever they go in the planet, they find their interest. Then they create a hype, they make a justification, and then they go there and then they settle themselves out there. This is what we have seen, what has gone in Iraq, what we have seen in the Middle East, we have seen elsewhere in the world.
Everywhere.
Now, everywhere in the world. Now, Korea is what we are today talking is a little complex and a little out of the unique thing or the common thing. It's a little different, because here another joint is also involved in sitting, and is quietly sitting at the moment and watching around and watching for its own interest, obviously, and that is their right also, as the Americans watch their interest, certain others watch for their interest. The Koreans, over a large period of, after a long time, the Koreans have now basically thought that to stay away from each other is not the solution for us. So what I'm thinking probably is that they are trying to go for a solution inward instead of looking for a solution from outward, which is coming in. The inward solution is that North and South Korea, they are trying to come close to each other. They want to bridge their gaps. They want to be together again as brothers, though they may stay as sovereign countries. But then they want to be together at the moment. Does this really suit the other joints, those who are playing their game and those who want to encash this very charged kind of atmosphere which is out there, for which everyone is being deterred that, oh, look, there is a very charged country here which has got a huge nuclear capability. It can destroy the world. They have their this thing, that thing. So basically what I'm thinking is that deception will not work this time, and people will have to come out with the truth. And once the truth is unfolded at such a forum, and then the things will not be that good, or that settling down in which you are saying will not be mattering. So in that case, if I see from that angle, then I see Mr. Trump having a tough time to come. He has to basically come out with absolute truth, and that truth will only be his true intentions. Whatever.
But looking at Mr. Trump's track record, America is today living in a post-truth world. That is the phrase that the Trump administration has thrown around quite often. But let's talk about the outcome of what may happen. Let's say that if the Korean and American presidents meet and there is a declaration of peace. The first step is declaring peace between North and South Korea, which technically they are still at war. But of course, the hostilities have ceased. But even though it is a cosmetic sort of a gesture, but it has a long or far-reaching ramifications for the future. Salman, in your opinion, what is the cost that the Americans must bear in mind for any kind of a rapprochement between the North and South?
Actually, first of all, if we talk about the cost, we need to analyze the leadership roles as well. In the individual level of analysis, we look at the personalities of the leaders. The leaders that are there, which we are looking at, Kim Jong-un and Mr. Trump, their track record, as you mentioned earlier, is a bit ambivalent about many serious things. But coming to your question about cost, why there was no negotiations between US and North Korea in the history, it was because of this question of nuclear disarmament. Because US as the torchbearer of a nuclear non-proliferation treaty and being a proponent of a country which is not comfortable with any state who is pursuing nuclear weapon program. So in that case, if they have got some sort of clear signal that the program will be rolled back, I think then it's fine, then it's a fair deal. But if that is not the case, and if there is a chance of North Korea resorting back to its nuclear development, I think that's the biggest cost that he would be paying. Just going into cosmetics and getting good photographs and good video TV coverage. Apart from that, in realpolitik, if Kim Jong-un is emerging as a smarter entity in this deal, that after some time, and this skepticism is very much present in the US think tank circles as well, that what if after some time, if he is not rolling back the program and he starts building up, because he would have that cushion, he would have that space to peacefully and silently build up his nuclear program and then deter the world.
Can I just add that Mr. Donald Trump has suddenly appeared to have backed away from his earlier demand that Pyongyang must swiftly and completely denuclearize?
I mean, that's what I'm referring to, because initially he was not comfortable with me meeting him. He just said something about cancelling the meeting, and then eventually we saw back-channel diplomacy.
Mr. Pompeo had quite a few visits to make.
Yes, and his close-eyed, I'm forgetting his name, he also visited United States, their intelligence chief.
Yes.
So they have this back-channel diplomacy, and somebody convinced Trump out of his team that go for the summit. They are going for the summit. It has created great nuance value in the media circles and everywhere. Plus, if the agreement is reached upon, it's a great news for the world. In the world where there are ongoing conflicts which have distorted the image of international institutions, the image of peace building, peacemaking initiatives. So if something of that sort is going on, and that too, as Major Saab was also referring to the big giants, I mean Russia and China, if they are also comfortable with it and they are also coexisting with the fact that the summit is going through an advertisement that only shows Trump on its face, then it's not a bad thing, it's a good omen. But eventually in global politics, things that are portrayed in front, they're not actually what people portray, and people what say they do not mean those things.
Right.
So peace might not mean peace at this moment of time.
Right.
It looked like peace.
Okay, we've been joined by Dr. Rifat Hussain. He's a defense analyst. Let's get his views on these ongoing developments as well. Dr. Rifat, in your opinion, do you think that Mr. Donald Trump has a chance of getting a Nobel Prize if he is able to bring the war between the North and South Koreas to an end, an agreement is, or a ceasefire is signed, or a document is signed which says that hostilities have come to a close after 65 years? What are your expectations from the summit, sir?
Well, with regard to the Trump's claim to getting the Nobel Peace Prize,
I think we're having some technical problem with the sound. I can't really hear you, sir. I will try and get in touch with Dr. Rifat Hussain again because there's a problem with the sound. I'm really sorry. Coming back to the studio, sir. Sir, let's talk about the effects of any deal that may happen between Mr. Trump and Kim Jong-un. Do you think that it might even end up eroding U.S. leverage in future negotiations if Mr. Kim Jong-un turns out to be the winner after that summit?
I think absolutely unpredictability is the hallmark of the American policy, I would say. And if not the American policy, at least I can very conveniently say for Trump administration. That is what is happening. They are so unpredictable. Whatever they try to show on ground, well, once the real time comes in, well, it's totally a different ballgame. And then at that time, if this thing happens, that they try to, that's why I'm saying, what is the truth and what is the reality? One needs to really understand that. We are just seeing what is happening, and we want that thing to be, as we are predicting that everything will be going good, good, good. It is good. It's a very good solution, very good omen that the two countries, they bridge the differences. He emerges as a very good leader. But then, does it really going to happen that way is a million-dollar question. Because the signals are not that way. At least to me, it looks that there is a hidden agenda in this entire game which is being played here.
So let's talk about what each side really wants, at least what they declared. Salman, if you'd also like to comment on this. The Americans want complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. The Koreans want the Americans to leave. And that is as basic as it gets. Yeah. Do you think that that is going to be in any way a workable solution?
Well, expecting Americans to leave from the region where they have closest allies and they have business interest as well. And with that too, there is no active war. I think if it's a comfortable presence, why would America leave? It's not an uncomfortable presence, though they are keeping their uncomfortable presences as well in many parts of the world.
There are joint US and South Korea military drills happening all the time, which are cause for concern for the North. So their first demand would obviously be to stop those military drills. And our second demand would be that what is the reason for the US presence in the Korean peninsula? It's a similar kind of a demand why the Afghans are asking the Americans to leave as well. And we have some good news on the Afghan side as well, where there has been a ceasefire announced between the Afghan government and the Taliban. So that's also a very positive development. We hope that it leads to better things. But coming back to the Korean issue, sir, do you think that it's going to erode US influence in the region?
I think if a summit is going on and if they reach at a conclusive treaty, a peace treaty, then definitely there would be, on the face of it, there would be confidence building measures taken from both sides. They would not resort to any sort of policy which kind of is detrimental for the national security of any of the party. So then afterwards, the military drill going after the summit would have a different value. Now it carries a different value because when North Koreans used to do a nuclear test or a missile test, they used to pass on some signals. And those signals would have deterrent values from Japan, for Japan and Korea both. And same was the case with the drills. The drills would be in the response of those missile tests. So if that is not the case, obviously those military exercises would lose its value the way it was taken as or perceived as earlier. So that would be a different case. US is playing between it is playing a chessboard where it would try to save its influence and business interest, plus Trump will also get some good media coverage, and after so much negative perception that he has earned in this time, he would emerge as a leader who has, and if God forbid, by the way, though it's a personal comment, Nobel Peace Prize is given to Trump, that would create a good political nuance in United States for Trump because he is not enjoying a good repute in United States as well. So this summit has got different facets on ground, politically, in politico-economic perspective, and strategically, yes. Plus, there is also a question that the reliance of Japan and South Korea over US defenses It's also then it would be a question mark in the future. How much the dependence will count for United States of America in terms of money and in terms of political influence both, because if there would be no threat, if Kim Jong-un is becoming a peaceful guy from now onwards, and there is no issue in the region, then how would they play on
the
these
definition of a
threats?
peaceful guy would be that there would be complete denuclearization, and that is something that Pyongyang is not willing to do, in your opinion. Do you think so? Because if you look at what happened recently, Mr. John Bolton, the national security advisor of Mr. Trump's administration, referred to the Libyan model and was giving that example to the Koreans, which the Koreans obviously shot down and said that we are not looking at any Libyan model, mind you, and we are not interested in that at all. So do you think that that's going to have any positive developments when we have such ideas being bandied about? North Koreans are not going to give up their nuclear program, are they?
I think absolutely. Why should they do it? The countries, the world is changing from geopolitics to geoeconomics very swiftly. So the Koreans also would like to encash on that. That is one interest out there. And if the nuclearization or the denuclearization comes in its way and hinders their growth on that account, well, they could have thought of that. But I think at the moment they are not interested in that thing. But for America, definitely that is their interest. They want to grow economically, and they don't want to get into these kind of things anymore. So their interest is very obviously out there, that they want to be part of the economic solution for which is being given not only by them, but now they are trying to follow someone. Here is a leader is somewhere else. Leader is China, the one who has given this new concept. So America is trying to swiftly follow it, because America is feeling threatened all over the world, that they are very they are very swiftly going to lose its place, because the economics is something which everyone unanimously all over the globe, they are trying to say that yes, this is the solution for the world peace. So if the world peace order is coming from somewhere else, I don't think so he qualifies for any kind of Nobel Prize peace out there. Well, he is not qualifying. There's no definition. Well, if you
well, if
are
they could give it to
entangled,
President Obama,
because
sir.
if your hands are entangled, if your hands are in the blood in one of the places, and you are trying to do some solution, you're trying to bring out some kind of solution elsewhere in the world, does not mean that only for that particular good work, a small good work which you have done, you qualify for the World Nobel Peace Prize. You have to be unanimously declared for that everywhere.
True, sir. But having said that, President Obama had no reason to be given a Nobel Peace Prize, and he was given one for bombing people all over the place. He didn't even have any peace treaties in the offing at all. So for that, if you compare the two, then it would be a major achievement for Mr. Donald Trump if he was to create a peace treaty between North and South Korea.
Well, that would be very unfortunate for those who are sweating for getting down to Nobel Peace Prizes, because if the Nobel Peace Prize can be given for the warriors or for those who commit genocides, then I think the definition for World Peace Prize should be changed.
I agree,
and that
sir.
needs to be done at that. So I'm not trying to be, very critically against some personality here, but I'm trying to see the deeds.
Right.
What you are doing on ground, that is what I'm saying. The truth needs to be unfolded now. We do not want to miss words anymore.
Absolutely.
We should not. We should bring out the realities on ground, and we should face it. And that's my point is.
Well, if you look at the overtures that Mr. Kim has made towards the US, we have the suspension of the long-range missile tests and the closing of a nuclear bomb test site. So these are some indicators that Mr. Kim has given to the US that he's willing to engage in a productive conversation to end this hostility. But still, even if we go all the way, it would have other legal repercussions. For example, China would also need to be a signatory in any peace deal that takes place between the Koreans. How do you think the Chinese are observing this entire situation? And of course, the United Nations role will also have to be looked at.
I think Chinese are in contact with the Korean officials, and North Koreans have taken them into confidence over whatever they are doing with Americans, because Chinese were the only country, I think, apart from Russians, who have got not only influence but great relationship with North Koreans. Otherwise, North Koreans have always been, for the last 50, 60 years, a very secluded kind of a country, which is, you know, always, the leadership is always angry and always in war mongering mode. As far as United Nations is concerned, for United Nations and for all these international instruments that deals with the test banning of nuclear weapons and nuclear disarmament, arms control, all these regimes, for them it's a very welcome gesture. For them it's a very welcome precedent that has been set in 21st century, because for the last 15-16 years these think tanks, these international organizations have been working in that direction. But since the global politics has been very volatile and antagonistic, so that's why it was difficult to find space or create position or do advocacy to convince countries over denuclearization or nuclear restraint regimes or somehow controlling arms races. Because everywhere states are looking for their securities. For example, look at South Asia. I mean, it would look very nice to talk about nuclear restraint regime, but both the countries, India and Pakistan, are at loggerheads. So their defense realities do not allow them to go into any restraint. And same is the case with other parts of the world as well. So if in this volatile region, where North Korea a few months back has been threatening other actors with missile strikes and with war, and it is coming up with something which is pointing towards denuclearization at the end of the day maybe, or if not denuclearization, arms race and dismantling these test sites. So it helps all those regimes, particularly CTBT, which had kind of lost its meaning in the past 10-15 years. There was a time when it got great importance and everybody was so involved in it. But main countries when backed off, and particularly United States of America, when they were not ready to ratify it. They are, by the way, signatories, but they have not ratified it. And countries like India who had advocated for CTBT, and they were in the plenary and everything, and then refused to sign it. And Pakistan was then following the course. So for treaties like CTBT, for nuclear non-proliferation regime, for nuclear restraint, the idea of nuclear restraint, it's a very positive gesture, and that too coming from a country which is known to be very irresponsible. And I think we remember one day we were talking about the nuclear buttons, that both the guys were
comparing the size of their buttons,
and they were talking to each other in these terms.
Right.
They were talking to each other. They are the leaders of the states, and they were talking in the sense of usage of nuclear weapons, which is very alarming. Generally, states do signal each other with usage, but they do not intend to. Whenever there is some intentions, it alarms the whole world. And they did it. I mean, we all experienced that intentions.
Right.
So in that case, it's a very welcome development if that happens. But the spin in the argument is coming from Gulf, Persian Gulf, because at the same time US is trying to reach at a nuclear restraint structure in Korean Peninsula, but at the same time they have created a situation where day before yesterday we got the news that Iran has decided to resume its its uranium enrichment. And
well, they've just started the first step, which is the remanufacturing of the centrifuges, which they were allowed to do according to the deal, which is JCPOA. They were allowed to do that, but they weren't allowed to use them for the next 10 years. But let's see where that's going to head. Again, a very dangerous situation developing there as well. One last question on this particular topic, sir. What do you think would be the unintended consequences of the deal in Singapore for the United States, sir?
I think if they reach to a logical end to it and bring a peace deal, and if that is signed, and it really means that, that would mean a lot for the world as a whole. But then at the same time, there should be no hidden agendas into that. And if it does not happen, then obviously it's going to be a futile effort on that account. Because if the peace deal happens out there, then this is a great message which is going across the world, that yes, here is a model where these things can be happening. And as Bhatt is saying already, you know, that Pakistan and India can be the next to be brought onto that table for having begin peace talks and resolving the issues which are long outstanding issues.
And before that, sir, we also saw the rapprochement between East and West Germany, which is pretty similar to the North and South Korean situation. So anything
Yes,
is possible.
anything
We hope
is
that
possible.
Good things and good news comes from
Definitely.
that summit on the 12th of June.
Definitely.
So let's move on to our other second topic, which is far more important to us and closer to home, closer to our hearts, and that is the issue of Kashmir, sir. It has been a trouble spot for the last 70 years. 7 decades have gone by, sir. The people of Kashmir are witnessing and suffering the worst atrocities that human beings can undergo under the tyrannical regime of the BJP government and Modi Sarkar's treatment of the Kashmiri people, sir. Now, on a humanitarian side, sir, in the 21st century, we are seeing that a nation of people is being kept from their right of self-determination and are being continuously tormented. And yet, it is only Pakistan that is raising its voice, but unfortunately, Pakistan's voice is not being heard. What can we now do seriously, sir, to make sure that this issue is taken up on the world's agenda, not just Pakistan's?
I think we have seen a lot of this thing. Now, Pakistan has to be proactive in its policy for supporting the Kashmir. We very openly say that yes, we provide them moral support, and we are in support of Kashmir issue, because Kashmiris, it's an unfinished agenda which was decided by Jawaharlal Nehru, who himself went to the UN and said that yes, this is an unfinished agenda and it will be done according to the aspirations of the people of Kashmir, and the right of self-determination, the plebiscite, will be given to them. But they have never given to them, despite 70 years have gone in. And this is the most contagious issue in the South Asia, which is becoming a real tumor now, growing, and it can burst any time for that matter. The consequences, if it bursts, then nobody can really control that. They are trying to undermine the situation in Kashmir. That's what I'm saying. The world leaders need to, the UN needs to be now really, they need to understand that yes, the situation may not be that same which they were thinking 20 years back. In last 20 years, the Kashmir issue or the things have changed dramatically in Southeast Asia, in Asia. The Afghan issue, you know, the menace of terrorism which has gripped this entire region for a very long time. Alhamdulillah that today that Pakistan has fought, the entire nation, the resilient nation of Pakistanis, they fought against this menace of terrorism, and we have wiped it off. We have shown that we are resilient if we want to do something. We are resilient for the cause of Kashmir as well. Let me be very, very vocal on that. We are not stepping back on support of Kashmir. We want this Kashmir to be decided as per the Kashmiris' aspirations.
Absolutely, sir. But in order to determine the actual will of the Kashmiri people, it is imperative that the UN plebiscite is conducted. But unfortunately, the United Nations, with its non-binding resolutions, have no mandatory enforceability.
UN is nothing else except for US. You know, they have the most powerful vote out there. That's what I'm trying to say, that at one place of the world, you're going for a peace out there. You're trying to have seminars and what not. You're trying to do the peace treaties. You're standing at the verge of getting signed a peace treaty between the two, North and South Korea. But what about Kashmir? Why are you not sounding here? Do you think, or you are trying to underestimate the situation? I think where human genocide is happening actually on ground is more important than anyone else ruling off or subsiding with the nuclear enrichment or doing that kind of programs or delaying the programs on that account cannot be measured by human genocide which is going on elsewhere in the world. Situation in Syria, situation in Afghanistan, situation in Kashmir and elsewhere in the world. What else do you want to see? The world as a whole, I would say, needs to be awakened, and Pakistan needs to be now more active than any other time. This is the right time for Pakistan to be more active and take its case to the UN repeatedly. They may not listen, that's fine. They may not be listening to us in the past as well. They may not listen even now, but it does not mean that we should go passive in our stance as well. We need to be more proactive, more proactive. We need to follow it more seriously. We need to go out there. We need to have, we need to get together all these countries, those who are at least in support of, worldly support of Kashmir issue. We can get together them as well in Pakistan. Why can't we do that? We should start thinking on that now 2018, as once began, I said, should be declared as Year of Freedom for Kashmiri people, supported by Pakistan and the others, friends of Pakistan in the world. Where that slogan has gone, we started in January 2018. Today it's June 2018. I'm not satisfied, at least, with the progress. We have not shown any progress on that account. We declared it. Year 2018 should be declared as the year, and it was done, that yes, we will need to support and we need to pursue this very vigorously, very actively, that yes, Kashmir should be resolved in 2018. But I think there's a lot to be done as yet.
Well, sir, one of the perceptions that is being talked about these days, Salman, is that if we look at the coercive measures that the Indian government has used against the people of Kashmir, for the past 70 years, they have not achieved their desired result. And similarly, if we talk about the constant struggle of the Kashmiri people, and even if they want to call it militancy, that activity against the forces of India is also not really bearing fruit. And there's no chance that either militancy in Kashmir or the revolt of the Kashmiri people or the coercive measures of the Indian government are going to bear any fruitful result. Is that not obvious for everybody to see?
Definitely, it's a lesson to be learned particularly by Indian government, because they have been trying different tools and instruments to somehow manipulate, influence, persuade, dominate in any possible way over the Kashmiri population or the Kashmiri people. But Kashmiri people have been determined in their demands for their freedom. They have been fighting it. And I think they should also read the history, because wherever states or instruments of power have used these kind of policies and strategies, they have not been able to convince people. Retrospectively, it has further strengthened the ideologies of freedom and liberty and all. May it be French Revolution, and there are countless examples in history. So King could not persuade people in that case. King always had to change his course of actions, one. Two, I think this time, though Modi wanted to act more smarter and more aggressive, and he wanted to present a case in front of Indian population that I am the man, I am the guy, and I will tame down the Kashmiris, I will deal with Pakistan, I will do and I'll do that. And but he ended up in creating a new intifada in Kashmir, a new phase of freedom struggle, which the whole world has seen. Now, if they are silent, that's another issue. But the kind of freedom struggle that our generation have witnessed, I mean, it's in the 21st century, it's a remarkable thing where young freedom fighters have emerged, and they've used the platform of social media, and they've laid down their lives for this idea of freedom that the world, the states are living for. So definitely the situation is different, and Indian government is also aware of the situation. Even there are some voices inside India as well, from the core of India, who are now criticizing and who are now realizing the fact that something is terribly wrong with the policy that we have adopted for Kashmir or about Kashmir. And in this
and they're
case,
also being threatened by the Indian government.
yes, definitely. That's an understandable behavior from a tyrant-minded country or leadership. But in this case, Pakistan has also emerged as a state which now India cannot point fingers at, because previously India would used to point fingers at Pakistan and try to demoralize or demean the Indian freedom struggle by somehow linking Pakistan to the militancy or anything else. But this time Pakistan has shown great restraint, and we always say that, see, this is an indigenous struggle, this is a Kashmiri struggle, and we support their cause morally, we support their cause legally. We are presenting their case at the United Nations and at different forums. So you cannot blame us, because since we were also fighting this war against terror and against militancy, so they could not implicate us with the old rhetorics. So this is also something positive which came out. But still, I think a lot of work is needed, a lot of proactive diplomacy is required on part of
That was going to be my
Pakistanis
next
as
question,
well.
actually, Salman, and that let me bring that to Major Saab. Sir, we feel now, after this determination, that there is a very, very urgent need to return to diplomacy when it comes to dealing with the Kashmir conflict, sir. We need to build confidence-building measures with Kashmiris via the media and also communicating the message of the Kashmiris to other countries abroad. Do you think that we've been able to do that effectively? Although the government did undertake some foreign missions, or there were a number of parliamentarians who were sent abroad to fight for the Kashmiri cause and put their point of view in front of those people, but unfortunately it didn't really yield the desired results.
No, that was what my point was, Waqas, that I was saying that we need to be more proactive on this and we need to pursue it, though we start with a lot of zeal.
So because India attacks Pakistan, Pakistan's Kashmir narrative from the highest political pedestal and from all global and regional platforms and forums, but Pakistan's response is not adequate, sir, to say the least.
Yes, of course, it is not adequate. There are two things into it. One is the response to India. If they try to malign Pakistan for they try to, suppress this freedom struggle, the indigenous freedom struggle of the young Kashmiris, and post-Burhani especially is important, the era which started off there. So that is one, to counter that. That's one thing. The other thing is that we have to support that morally and take that to the internationally all over the world. And that is what we started off, but then at the same time, we did it for a couple of months, and after that, it has diffused. We do not see that kind of entourage or that kind of people visiting again the countries all over the world, getting the vote for confidence onto them that yes, you need to also talk to the Indians. You need to talk to the UN. You need to raise your voice in UN at least. If only UN is not listening the raised voice or this thing for Pakistan because of certain reasons that they don't want to annoy India, because it's a bigger democracy, a shame democracy.
So-called democracy, sir.
A shame democracy.
I think even the United Nations is not a democracy.
And the rhetoric which they want to use for their elections, they want to keep it alive also in shape of Kashmir. That look, they can blame Pakistan for its involvement in their affairs, though they are involved much more than what we are, but they are doing it. But that is one thing that we need to counter them at international level as well. But the other is that is what purely is our stance. That purely what we have to do. We need to sound very loudly. If the others are not, we need to pursue, we need to motivate them to group together and then make your sound in the UN. Well, the UN can't really ignore if 120 countries in the world, they start shouting for one thing. I don't think so that the world can then remain silent for that. Have we been able to muster with us the support of even 10 to 15? Well, let's leave it to the people, those who really are sitting at the helm of the affairs. Have we done it? If we have not done it, I think today is also not, it's not very late that even today we realize it and we started doing it. Then let's do it. We need to be active on that.
So the half-hearted attempts that we have made in
they
the
will
past,
make no results. There will be no results.
So we need to be committed completely to this cause.
Absolutely. Dedicated efforts have to go in. Half-hearted means that you are not very serious.
Well, that's what we've seen, and that's why it's been 70 years since we've not been able to achieve anything.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, well, thank you very much, sir, for taking out the time and sharing your views with PTV World on these very important matters. Before we end the program, we always like to say that please do draw your own conclusions from what you've heard. But before we end the program, we also want to say that senior politician Rasool Bakhsh Palijo has passed away on Thursday morning after a prolonged illness. He was a notable leftist Marxist leader, scholar, writer. He was a leading human rights lawyer, leader of the Awami Tehreek. Mr. Palijo was the founder of and chairman of the Awami Tehreek People's Movement, a progressive leftist party. Mr. Palijo has earned a place in the pantheon of leaders from South Asia who earned everlasting fame in the struggle against feudalism, martial law, colonialism, and imperialism. He's the author of more than 40 books on numerous subjects, with 26 of them being in the Sindhi language, and his topics range from literature, politics, prison diaries, culture, and poetry. May his soul rest in peace. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. On that note, it's goodbye.